Hey, this is Chris from Rekkid Talk, so let's do our last 5 records in 5 minutes for the year 2022. We'll come back probably in February of 2023 and do some more of these. So today we're going to go back in time 30 years to 1992. 1992 might be my all time favorite year in music. I know you're supposed to say something in the 1970s, but for me, the early 90s is really my sweet spot for music. I had a really tough time trimming this down to 5 records. I thought about doing a 10 and 10, but I went with 5 and 5. Most of these are going to be some records that I don't think I've shown before, or at least not very much. If you've watched my channel, some of the things you might be expecting me to show for 1992, I'm not going to show today. I've shown them in other videos. But I've already babbled for a minute, so let's get into it. Let's go with some Alice in Chains. And so we got some Reissue Mania here. We got Dirt. We got them Bones and Rooster and Angry Chair and all those other great songs that you know. We still had the full assortment of the entire band. And so this is like the grunge album that the metal guys, the 80s rock guys like, and they will just say, we hate Nirvana, we hate Pearl Jam, but we like Alice in Chains. Well, I like Nirvana and I like Pearl Jam, but I also like Alice in Chains. So, and then another great 1992 album, Beastie Boys, Check Your Head. Four sides, 2 slabs of vinyl beauty. Jimmy James and Funky Boss and Pass the Mic. Finger Looking Good and So What You Want. And all this Professor Booty. And so, of course, the late great Adam Yauch, Adam Horowitz, and Mike Diamond. And so this came out after Paul's Boutique. I guess we can probably argue about whether Paul's Boutique or Check Your Head is their best album of all time. I think Paul's Boutique tends to win out on that. Maybe at some point I'll sit down and I'll do a ranking the albums of the Beastie Boys and sort it out once and for all what the best Beastie Boys album is, but I have a hard time imagining my 1 and 2 aren't going to be some ordering of Check Your Head and Paul's Boutique. And then we've got, digging into the H section, we've got some PJ Harvey, Dry, 2 Pure Records. So this is her debut. Call it the PJ Harvey Trio. This is really setting her up for Rid of Me, which is going to come out a year or 2 later. That album with Steve Albini that I think is just magnificent. But Dry is pretty damn good as well. And this really got us introduced to Polly Jean Harvey. Let's dig into some CDs. It is the 1990s. I don't know if I've ever shown Babes in Toyland before. Fontanelle happens to be the only Babes in Toyland album that I own. Kat Bielen, she's pretty wild. And Lori Barbero and Maureen Herman. And so 2 of them sang, and I always thought the funny thing was, so Kat Bielen's the blonde, she's the one with the scary voice. Lori Barbero, she's the one with the dreads. She's the one with the pretty voice. I like how that's like the opposite of what you would expect. So this is some pretty harsh, noisy stuff. And then finally, let's go with something that none of you have ever heard of before, unless maybe you lived in Bowling Green, Ohio in the early 90s. This group called Big Hunk of Cheese. One of the summers I worked in Yellowstone Park, one of my buddies was from there, and I traveled around and I visited him, and this was like one of his favorite bands, and I picked up this CD while I was there. Jerry Garcia's Dead and Chuck D and all those other cool sort of Red Hot Chili Peppery sort of sounding stuff. Big Hunk of Cheese.